Good afternoon. We have some students joining us. Coming in. How is everyone today? My name is Dana Wanger, and I am a career coach and a student and alumni relations coordinator here in the Career Enrichment Network in Sparks Building as part of the College of Liberal Arts. And we are so excited today for another part of Federal Government Week, and it's been a success so far. We have three amazing panelists here today joining us that have done internships in the federal government. And I know that's a couple hot topics there, right? Internships, people are excited. They want to know, how do I get an internship? What can it do for me? What are the steps that I should do to find an internship? And then the other is the federal government. Working for the government is so great. We have some stats that I think are going to be impressive to you about that. And what better people to have join us than Penn State alumni and students that have already done this. They've been in your shoes. They've taken the steps to do what they've done to get the internship, secure the internship, and have a successful experience. So we're so excited for that. All right, we're going to get started. We don't have a lot of time today. We're finishing at 1:10. We're following the class schedule today. So I want to talk quickly so we can get to hear the amazing panelists that we have. So again, my name is Dana Wanger. I'm student and alumni relations coordinator in the Career Enrichment Network and a career coach. I have my colleague, Danielle Liddick, here as well, and she is a career coach. She works specifically with LER students, as well as all students in the liberal arts. She is going to be monitoring the Q&A, and I'm going to highly encourage you to post questions in the Q&A. You'll find that at the bottom of your screen. I have a list of questions we're going to ask the panelists, but your questions are more important. So if you have them, put them in there. We'll do our best job to answer them. A couple other things. This afternoon at 4 o'clock, Danielle is sponsoring a panel on federal government careers, not internships, but full-time opportunities. May hit on some internships as well, but she has some hiring managers from the government that are going to be on that panel. You're welcome to sign up. It's a virtual panel at 4 o'clock. And tomorrow, to cap off the week, is the Crim Expo, and that's in the hub from 11 to 3. And we will throw some links in the chat on these opportunities. You can check out our events page and also some of the links that Danielle is going to be putting in the chat. Yesterday, it was amazing. I was telling our panelists, we went to Washington, D.C. With 50 students from the college yesterday and had an amazing experience. I went to a career expo there, networked with some alumni. The Penn State network is huge, right? And that is part of the reason that I came to Penn State. I'm an alumni myself, and I've worked at Penn State for many years. And we do like to take care of each other. And, you have a lot in common with these, people that have already been undergraduate students, graduate students, and graduated. And we want to help connect you to them. So we had an amazing time yesterday in DC talking to some of our alums that are working in the government positions. All right, last thing I want to do before I get to the panelists is just put a plug in for the Alumni Mentor Program. The signups will conclude this Friday. So Danielle will be putting a link in the chat. Please sign up. As we talk about our amazing alumni, you can be matched one-on-one with a mentor this year if you sign up by Friday. And that can be a great experience, again, to build that network. Now, to the most important part, I would like to introduce our panelists, starting with Maddie. Maddie Lapatina graduated in May of 2023 with a degree in political science, part of the Schreier Honors College. Maddie is currently the Legislative and County Bar Services Coordinator at the Pennsylvania Bar Association in Harrisburg, PA. Maddie completed an internship in the summer of 2022 with the United States Department of Transportation in Washington, D.C. as a public affairs intern. Maddie also was a student intern in our office in the Career Enrichment Network when she was amazing, when she was an undergraduate student. Welcome today, Maddie. Julia graduated in this past May, 2024, with majors in history, political science, and Middle East studies, and a minor in global security as part of Schreier's Honors College as well. Julia is currently a PhD history student at George Washington University. Julia completed an internship this past summer with the Library of Congress in Washington, D.C. as a research assistant. And in the past two summers, she had internships with the National Park Service as well, as a student at Penn State. So welcome, Julia. And last but not least, Xiomara Larkin. Mara is currently a student that will be graduating in May with a major in political science and minor in history. Mara is also part of the IUG program, the Integrated Undergraduate Graduate Program, which combines your undergrad and master's degree in a 5-year program. And she will be graduating with Master of Public Policy in May as well. Mara completed an internship this past summer, 2024, with the Department of State in Washington, D.C., and the previous summer, she worked as an intern in the House of Representatives in Washington, D.C. Welcome. All right, so to get started, let's start with Maddie. Could you just introduce yourself, tell us about your internship experience, and I will mute myself.
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Maddie, as was introduced. So I worked as a public affairs intern within the U.S. Department of Transportation in D.C. It was a really great experience. I loved it a lot. I worked specifically for the Office of the Secretary, so Secretary Buttigieg. I worked really closely with his social media manager to manage his pages, as well as his speechwriters and conducting research for his speeches. I wrote press releases with that staff. So it was a really great experience. I learned a lot about transportation that I didn't otherwise know. And I'm happy to answer any questions that you guys have about that experience and life in DC as well.
Awesome. Go ahead, Julie.
All right. So as Dana mentioned, my name is Julia. I did an internship this past summer in 2024 with the Library of Congress, and specifically with the John W. Kluge Center, which hosts visiting scholars from around the world to come and do research kind of in residence at the library. And so I worked as a research assistant. There were 17 interns, so quite a lot of us, and we were paired with 1 to 2 scholars to help them, do research for their project. So I was paired with Anissa Ramirez, who's a material scientist, who's working on a series of children's books about lesser known Black inventors and personalities. And so I helped her construct a timeline of this woman, Dorothy Darby's life. And Darby was a pilot and a parachutist and one of the first Black women to get a pilot's license in the US. And I also worked with Mahassan Nasr al-Din, who is a Palestinian filmmaker who's working on her dissertation in the UK on the women's movement in Mandate Palestine. And also just very briefly, as Dana mentioned, I did also a couple of internships with the National Park Service. So in 2022, I was the Museum Services intern at Gettysburg National Military Park. And then in 2023, I was an Archives and Records technician intern at Potomac Heritage National Scenic Trail. So I'm happy to talk about that as well.
Hi, I'm Xiomara. Like Dana mentioned, I am a senior and first year's master's student, and over the summer I got to work at the Department of State. So I basically worked in the Bureau of Legislative Affairs, which is the bureau that works directly with Congress, and that fed into my internship from the previous summer, because the previous summer I worked for the House of Representatives. So I worked in a congressional office, Congresswoman Sidney Kamlager-Dove, 37th District of California, and I did that through the Congressional Black Caucus Foundation. And both internships were amazing. I learned so much about the federal government at large. And so I'm happy to answer any questions, and I'm happy to be here.
Awesome. Thank you so much. All right, let's go to Julia. How did you find your internship or internships? Did you use USA Jobs, or can you talk about the process you did to find your internship?
Yeah, so actually both my internship with Gettysburg National Military Park and then my internship at the Library of Congress in the Kluge Center, I found and applied for through the Penn State Richards Center, which is the Civil War era studies center at Penn State. They kind of coordinate and fund those internships. And so you can check out their page. They do a museum services internship at Gettysburg. They also do interpretive intern positions at Gettysburg and I believe at Harper's Ferry National Historic Site, which is in West Virginia. And they also run this Kluge Center internship. And then my internship at Potomac Heritage National Scenic Trail, I found through this website and program called NCPE, the National Council for Preservation Education, which does a number of internships, anything from kind of 3 months to 6 months to even year-long position. So that's also something to keep in mind as kind of a post-grad thing and check out their listings. So that's how I found that one.
Okay, so my internship was through the Future Leaders in Public Service, which is part of the Partnership for Public Service. To be honest, I can't remember how I found it, probably through LinkedIn. But this was the first year that they were doing the program, so we were kind of guinea pigs. It's a really great program. They've done a lot to improve it since I was in the program. At the time, they were only partnershiped with two government agencies. It was the Department of Transportation, and I want to say the Department of Commerce. I believe they've expanded that since then. I'm not sure. But I was placed with the Department of Transportation, and then I was then placed with the Office of Public Affairs. So if you haven't already heard of this program, definitely recommend checking it out. They do accept a good number of students. I want to say there were 150 students in my cohort. I was only one person placed with the Office of Public Affairs. So it was just one intern in that office. However, there were many interns throughout the department. So I did get to meet a lot of other interns. So I wasn't alone completely. But yeah, it was a really great experience. I loved it. The program offers a stipend, which is really great, which is, helpful, especially if you're going to have to move to DC for the summer. And they offer a lot of other resources as well as professional development opportunities. So that was really great. But yeah, that's how I found my internship.
So the first internship that I found, my friend actually told me about it because originally I wanted to just go to law school and nothing else, just wanted to be a lawyer. And then my friend was like, hey, you should apply from the Congressional Black Caucus Foundation, which was how I got the internship in Congress. And it's a really great program. They cover housing, they give you a stipend, they cover some of your transportation while you're in DC, and they basically partner you with different congressional offices or committees that you can work on and experience according to your interest. And so that's how I found my first internship. And then the second internship, I basically applied through USA Jobs. And so I applied for the student internship program for the summer for this Department of State. But they also have a second internship program, which is you get to spend one summer at the Department of State and the second summer abroad. And so both highly recommended.
Awesome. Thank you. All right. Can you hear me okay? Okay. All right. So we're going to go to the chat, the question and answer. Good afternoon. For humanities grad students who have the required skills for these internships, yet may study in a less directly related field, do you have any tips on how to connect our studies to the internship in our applications and cover letters?
I can take that question. So that's a really great question. I know that sometimes it feels like, oh, like if I'm applying for a federal government internship, I only have to be political science, or oh, I only have to be like history. And like I'm both those majors in mine. So like there's nothing wrong with that. But definitely because federal government covers so many aspects in terms of policy and in terms of like everything that relates to our daily lives, no matter what major, no matter what minor you are, everybody is eligible to apply. I know that, for example, like when I was working for the Department of State, there were so many people in so many different majors, like public health. Somebody was like nursing, like it was just so many different topics. But I think the most important thing is understanding the values and the goals of the institution that you specifically want to work for, and basically tying in those values and goals within that institution. So for example, like I worked for the Bureau of Legislative Affairs, and basically I was like, oh, like I don't have too much international relations experience, but because they work directly with Congress, I did have congressional experience. And so it's just finding those small niches of like, maybe I am in public health, but there are so many different departments that how can I tie my personal interest to the specific department that I'm applying for? Or even that's considered whether you want to work like in the House of Representatives, whether you want to work in the Senate, no matter what, you just kind of have to find how you can tie it together. And each person's application is going to be very different, but all of them can come together and work towards your interests and goals. I hope that answers your question.
Thank you. Julia or Maddie, would you like to add anything to that?
Maddie, you go first.
Oh, okay. So I'll just add that a lot of times, I know at least for me personally, when I was applying for these internships, I would sometimes get a little intimidated just because I feel like there's this expectation that you're supposed to go into an internship with a ton of experience and a ton of knowledge. That's not what the point of an internship is. The point of it is to get the experience. This is supposed to be your first or maybe second professional experience that you're having in your career. So I wouldn't say, if there's an internship that you're genuinely interested in, you think that it would be something that you would learn a lot from, then don't let that intimidate you into not applying for it. And also, don't let your background stop you from applying for it. So if you haven't had an internship yet, but this is still something you're interested in, still apply for it. If it's not directly related to your major, but you see this as something that could greatly impact your education and your career journey, still apply for it. You can always, like Mara was saying, you can find a way to tie your personal interests into what this internship is. So don't be intimidated, even if your background doesn't necessarily apply to an internship, is my, general point there.
Yeah, I'll echo what Maddie said about, not letting what you think your expertise is stop you from applying to something. When I did the internship at Gettysburg, I had, I have no Civil War experience. My research, and at that time I didn't know what I wanted to do, and now I study, modern Middle Eastern history. So I'm not by any means a Civil War historian, nor did I have any museum experience or working with artifacts, but it was something that I really wanted to do and was passionate about, and thought that it could kind of open career paths for me. And I think emphasizing that in an application will get you very far, even when, like Maddie said, an internship is supposed to build experience. It's not necessarily something that you have to come in already an expert in. And also, just as Mara said, I think federal government work is so diverse, and you end up doing such a mix of things. I mean, when I was at the library, in particular, this is the nature of the Kluge Centers that host scholars who are working on a huge variety of projects. Again, like I am not a historian of African-American history, and I'm not a material scientist, and I worked with a material scientist. And it's about, transferable skills and having the research and the discipline to be self-paced and to be self-motivated. And we had, people in public health. We had a master's student in computer science who was working with a scholar who was doing, digital humanities stuff. So I think that there's a lot of overlap in the skills that you can bring to a job.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Such great perspective, and just a lot of diversity in the positions and the opportunities. One interesting stat I want to share with you is right now there's less than 7% of government employees under the age of 35. And 1 in 3 government employees could be eligible to retire next year in 2025. So there's a big push right now to get younger people in government positions. So one of the places we visited yesterday, the Partnership for Public Service, I think Danielle might have already put that in the chat. Check it out. They've tried to that process that Maddie was talking about earlier of the future leaders. It's evolved and it keeps getting better. And they're putting a lot of time and energy in this to help recruit the next generation of government employees. So take a look at navigating their website, finding opportunities. USA Jobs is another place where you can build your resume, get in there. If you need any help with it, come in and see one of our career coaches here. But those are definitely important things to do. Okay, Maddie, you're up. Did you get to meet Pete Bouget?
Sadly, no. I'll keep the story short, but it was an 8 to 10 week internship. I only did 8 weeks, and on the 9th week is when the cohort got to meet him. So that was incredibly disappointing. But I did get to meet his deputy secretary, Secretary Trottenberg. So that was really awesome. And I got to meet a lot of other deputy secretaries of all the agencies. But sadly, I did not get to meet him.
Thank you. Here's one from the audience. What did your housing situation look like when you were interning in DC? That's a great question.
I can get started. So when I worked in DC, I lived on George Washington University's campus. So I lived in a dorm. It was not ideal, I won't lie. But it was very easy and accessible. It was in what's Foggy Bottom is the area that it's in. So it was like 3 blocks from the White House. I took the metro to the Navy Yard every day, which is where my office was located. But yeah, it was really easy. I will say there's a lot of colleges in the area that do this. It is a little pricey. So if you're able to find someone else who's living there, or if you're able to sublease, that's definitely preferable, but it is always an option.
Yeah, so I did the same thing that Maddie did, actually. I lived here on campus at GW, and again, it is kind of pricey. That being said, of the kind of universities and places like this that do student intern housing, GW was on the cheaper side and definitely is more convenient to the Hill and a lot of other places than, you know, Catholic or American even. So I am partial to Foggy Bottom now as someone who goes to school here. It's a lovely area. And again, the metro is easy to get everywhere.
I would say that both internships that I did gave me housing, and so that was a very, very huge benefit because I'm broke. I'm like, I cannot afford to live in DC right now, you know? And so, but basically I would say that so the first internship I lived in Noma, the second internship I lived in DuPont Circle. And both places were like pretty nice. I would say that if you are looking for housing, I do, like Maddie said, the colleges like sublease apartments or like housing complexes, and those are nice, but also like there are other programs like that will pay for your housing if like a financial barrier is something that is maybe feel discouraging you from applying, like for example, like the Congressional Black Caucus Foundation, there's the Congressional Hispanic Caucus Institute, the Asian Pacific American Institute for Congressional Studies, the Department of State. I know that I think a couple of other departments, they will also give you housing, like specifically for me, like the Department of State, they paid for housing, they paid for my flights, like they gave me a lot of different benefits. And then also like the Penn State also does have like pretty good scholarships to help cover your costs, in terms of like maybe giving you a scholarship so that you can like use that money for specifically whatever you need. And so definitely like looking into those opportunities is something that I know that personally helped me. Yeah.
Just jump off of that really quick and give a quick plug to the CEN because they do provide enrichment funding. So if you are a little nervous about covering the costs, you can apply for enrichment funding through the Career Enrichment Network. I know it was extremely beneficial to me. But you can also, if you're in the Schreier's College, they also offer enrichment funds. I think it goes by a different name, can't remember exactly, but you can also apply through there. So I was able to get funding both through the Career Enrichment Network and through the Schreier Honors College. So that was really, really helpful in helping me cover the costs to live in DC.
I will
Awesome.
third that point.
Yeah.
I also, when I was here at the library, the internship program that was through the Richard Center came with a fairly large stipend that helped cover housing and a lot of my other costs. At that point, I had graduated, so I was no longer eligible for career enrichment funding, but I did that from both liberal arts and Schreier for the summer before, and it was hugely helpful because I did like a sublet short-term rental kind of a situation. And so definitely look into that.
Awesome, fantastic. Yes, and we will, I know Danielle, I saw the chat light up there, so I'm sure she put a link about enrichment funding to apply for. Definitely do that. Question from the chat. What were some of the responsibilities and duties you had interning in the Library of Congress House of Representatives? What were some of the responsibilities and duties of an intern?
I can't go. Oh, you can go, Julie, if you want.
That doesn't matter. I'll just say at the library, and then the library has a number of internship programs, I will say. So I was through the Kluge Center. That is a mix of undergrads and grad students and people like me who are sort of in limbo between them. There's also the Junior Fellows program. If there are any grad students on the call, the Junior Fellows program that is directly through the library places grad students in different departments. But at the Kluge Center specifically, my responsibility was basically to the scholars that I was paired with. So whatever they needed to be done. So, you know, we met probably once a week and they brought new things that they had heard of, or I brought new things that I had come across in the collection. And then I would kind of, you know, go hunt things down, transcribe things, sometimes take notes, meet with librarians and ask them for anything that they, you know, might have come across. I met with, you know, the librarians in the Middle East Studies reading room. I met with, there's an African-American genealogy librarian that I met with, trying to track down more of Darby's family. And so my responsibility was largely to just the people that I was paired with.
I would say when I worked in the congressional office, a lot of my work was putting together briefing binders for the members, and definitely doing a lot of researching information on different policy topics that were for my members' interest, writing different policy memos and co-sponsorship memos. Basically, that's like writing like a kind of like a proposal, saying if the representative wants to sign off on a specific memo or not, and then also answering phone calls for many different constituents, which was one of my favorite parts.
It sounds like lots of communication. Awesome. Okay, let's get to the next one. Maddie, we'll start with you. Is there any specific part of the applications or resumes that you think helped you secure your internship? Or, you know, maybe how did you connect experience from previous positions, part-time jobs, student organizations? What did you use to help you stand out?
That's a great question. This might kind of sound silly to say, but the most important thing is to thoroughly read the job description. I know that sounds probably really obvious, but it goes overlooked by a lot of people. You want to specifically be mentioning things that are said in the job description in your application. So whether that's your resume, your cover letter, if there's questions that you're filling out in the online form, use the same language they're using, because with all of these different like AI and filters that they're using, they're looking for specific things. So you want to be restating the things that they're already saying. And then for me personally, I had already done one internship in politics. I interned for the Center County Democratic Committee during the 2020 election. So I used my experience from that, which was specifically in social media and public affairs work. So luckily I already had some experience that directly related to this internship. I also worked for the Career Enrichment Network doing some communications, public affairs work for them. So could still use that experience in my application. I was also a political science major. So all things that luckily for me directly related to my internship. So I tried to not only explain that to the best of my ability in my application, but then also talk about my direct interest. So why I wanted to work for the Department of Transportation, why I think that this internship would directly benefit my career and help me as sort of a launching pad into the rest of my career.
Fantastic. Yes, thoroughly reading the job description. It seems like it's something that just should happen, but that is so true. Those keywords and terms. Thank you, Maddie.
Yeah.
Julia or Mara, you want to add anything to that?
Sure. Again, I will second the thoroughly reading the job description and kind of, you know, hitting on things that they have starred for you. For instance, the Library of Congress position through the Richard Center is specifically kind of geared towards students that are interested in going to graduate school and doing research at kind of a graduate level at some point, whether that's, you know, for me, that was like immediate. Others, it might be further along the road, but that was something that I really emphasized. And again, I'd had some archival experience in my previous position. And so I kind of pulled on both, that I wanted to do research at an, you know, higher academic level and wanted to, you know, do archives from that side, but also that I'd had experience in kind of constructing archives and working through archival technique. So those were things I emphasized. I will also pass on a tip of a little piece of advice that one of my Park Service supervisors gave me as far as writing cover letters. And this is sort of specifically Park Service, but also generally federal government. And she was like, so we get so many applications that start with like, when I was a little kid and my family did a road trip to all the national parks and I knew I always wanted to work in the Park Service. And she was like, that might be true, but the people that succeed in getting the internships are often those who foreground their experience and how that position will help them in their career or where they want to go. And so I would say, stay away from the storytelling at the, you know, tie that in because they want to see that you're passionate about it. But from the get-go, start with, I'm really interested in this internship because it will help me, you know, do whatever in my career and I'm qualified because X, Y, and Z.
I would just echo what both Maddie and Julia were saying, especially Maddie in terms of the AI language. I know specifically USA Jobs is where I applied to the Department of State, and they're so like, honestly, don't copy paste it, but like pretty much like what the description is, pretty much add as much as you can into that entire to your own personal experiences, because like it's literally an AI generator that will like pick up on certain keywords that they want to see. And that could be said to the same of anybody who's just like generally like reading your application. I would also say networking. Like I know that people say like networking is like networking can be scary, but like I know that like for certain positions, I basically like reached out to like maybe like alumni when I was asked while I was doing the application and saying like, hey, like this is something that I am applying for, like how do you feel in this, or like what is this kind of position like entailing, like what do you kind of think, so it can kind of like if there's any specific jargon or language that like somebody who could be like an employer, somebody who's already working there can tell you, you can add that in to give you like a boost up. And I kind of did that through like looking at Lion Link and looking at different alumni networking services, sometimes just reaching out to people on LinkedIn and being like, hey, I'm interested in this position, or I'd love to grab a coffee with you, just kind of getting more of an idea of like what what an employer or somebody who's working there could be looking for within the application. And so that's kind of like a sneak peek tip that I kind of use a lot.
I love it. Thank you. Networking is so important. And you mentioned Lion Link and LinkedIn and just reaching out. Can I get a cup of coffee with you? I mean, you might be across the country from the person, but basically, can we have a chat, right? And can I pick your brain and find out how you got your position, what it's like, what are some skills that I should be communicating? All that is definitely good things to do. I'm going to jump back in the chat in a second here, but I have a question. Do you have a favorite moment or event from your internship experience?
I can start off. So one really cool thing that I got to do during my internship was I got to tour an air traffic control tower. We went to the Dulles airport and I got to go up into the actual tower and watch the controllers calling the flights in and announcing them to take off. It was really, really cool. Learned a lot about it. Didn't realize that there's a shortage in air traffic controllers. So if you're looking for an alternate career path, you can go into that. They're in high demand. But yeah, that was a really awesome experience. We got to do it with some of the other interns. I think like 30 of us went. But yeah, it was really cool. Got to do a simulator. Didn't do well, but it was a really cool experience and one of the many benefits of getting to work there.
I'll go next. My favorite internship experiences are probably from my time at Gettysburg. When I was the museum services intern there, they were installing a temporary exhibit. And so I got the chance to help, you know, like crawl around in exhibit cases and like drill into walls and hang paintings and do mounts and that kind of stuff. And that was just something that I never thought I was going to get to do. And it was fantastic. And I also got to, if any of you have been to Gettysburg and seen the cyclorama painting, there's a catwalk up above it. And I got to climb the ladder up to the catwalk to help do like climate readings to make sure it's not, you know, too dry, too humid, too hot, too cold. And that was a really, really memorable experience.
I would say one of my memorable experience, and then something like I'm proud in terms of like accomplishing in terms of work, is that when I worked for the Department of State, I got to attend and work NATO, which was like so awesome. And it was so cool meeting so many different very high level officials from like different countries. And so I had so much fun doing that. And then I think one of my favorite work experiences was that I got to help write a couple questions for the representative, which she did read at a hearing, which made me feel really proud. And so that was a lot of fun.
I love it. I love hearing all your stories and the smiles that, you know, that's what it's about, right? You're putting in the time, you're putting in the work, probably long hours, but then you get to have some fun with it too as well. Okay, so let's jump back to the chat. Perhaps as a first year student, when should students start thinking about applying for internships? You know, now for the summer, how early do you think for the government internships you need to apply?
I can start. I always say as soon as possible. I mean, I think the more experience, the better. Most college students usually come out of college with one internship under the belt. I think it's great to have more than one. If one's all you get, I think it's better than nothing. So I like to say more is always better. So if you can secure one for the summer after your freshman year, that's awesome. I will also say though, there are some internships that will only accept certain years. So make sure you're watching the job description and the requirements for the internship and see if they're only accepting, you know, juniors and seniors, or if they're only accepting, you know, this many credits. So pay attention to that. But overall, I say as early as possible or feasible.
Can I just ask a quick follow-up to that, Maddie? Has there been GPA requirements that you've had to submit certain GPA?
That's a great question. I want to say for the Future Leaders in Public Service one, I think they had to submit a GPA, but I don't remember if there was a requirement or not. I've always been told that if they don't require a GPA, don't list it unless you think it's going to help you. So if you have a really good GPA, list your GPA. If you don't list it, and then it's no harm, no foul.
I'll follow up on that if you want. As far as kind of timeline, at least for applying to things, I agree with Maddie that like more is better, as much as you can. As far as the actual application timeline for me, I know that the Richards Center usually releases the Gettysburg Harpers Ferry internships in like November, December. So I had applied for that, I think, kind of over winter break and heard back in January. The Kluge Center internship was new this past year. I was the first Penn State intern to go, so the timeline may or may not change, but I know that didn't get released last year until like February, and then I found out I think in March. NICP is more on a rolling basis, so that's parks have to apply to NICP because NICP funds projects that the parks are working on. It's sort of like a weird roundabout, like where the money comes from versus the work. And so those are on a rolling basis. So that's something I would say just check back on the website regularly to see what pops up. The one that I got was posted fairly late, and I didn't find out, I think, until April, and then I moved in May. So the timeline can be a little crunched, but you know, just because you don't have an internship in like February and everyone you know does, there are still opportunities that might show up. So don't stress.
I would say the same thing. If you are able to do an internship your freshman, your sophomore, like start as literally as early as you can. I know I did my first internship, and I didn't get paid, but I was just a volunteer working at a district office in Pennsylvania. And so literally start as early as you can because it will help you in your future. However, if you can't, it's okay, because you're like, things always tend to work out how they're supposed to do. And then also, definitely echoing what Julia said, a lot of the federal internships, they really do have a window, usually during the first semester. So like during the fall semester, a lot of the application portals open. And so try to start looking at internships as early as you can. Now that like you guys are kind of like having more of understanding and stuff like that, I know that like starting sometimes in August is helpful. September, October, November, certain internships, they definitely do a lot in the spring. So I know that, like, for example, like congressional internships, if you want to work on the Hill, a lot of them do open up in the spring semester. However, certain federal internships, like I know for me, the Department of State, the application was either ending of September or like beginning of October. And so definitely look as early as you can and just try to timeline it and plan it as much as you can. Also, they have sometimes very short windows. And so sometimes for when you go on like USA Jobs, sometimes the internships will only be open for like 2 weeks, and you should still apply, but or when all of the spots fill up. So sometimes USA Jobs will have like a set limit of how many applications they'll take. And then you basically have to see if you can make the quota before. But if you don't, that's perfectly fine, because like I said, everything works out how it's supposed to, but definitely get a head start.
Awesome, thank you. So your experience with your internship or internships, how has it shaped your career journey? I know, Julia, you're in grad school now. Maddie, you have a job. Mara, you're graduating still, but is this something you think that a student interns there, it can lead to a potential job at that agency or within government? What do you think are the benefits of an internship in the government? Like, how has it, impacted your career journey so far?
I can start with that. Oh my gosh, how has it not? Let me be for real. No, so like I kind of said a little while ago, I wanted to be a lawyer, and that was all I wanted. Like I was like, there's nothing else more in my life that I would want. And so I told myself everything I did was for law school until I got that first congressional internship. And I think one of the biggest things is like, oftentimes we think there's only a set amount of career, a set amount of jobs that like is in the world, but there are so many different jobs and different experiences that you can have, that like it really, doing a federal internship really just shows you how much opportunity there is, and shows you how many of your interests you can connect to the government at large. And so I never thought I would ever be doing anything in international relations or foreign service, but I know personally now for me, I've switched trajectories just a little bit. I'm still going to law school, but I do want to also be a foreign service officer. And so that's definitely like changed my entire life pretty much.
I can go next. So, I'm working a very different job now than I was doing at the Department of Transportation. I was a public affairs intern, and now I'm a lobbyist for a member association for lawyers and judges. So very different. However, like Mara said, I learned a ton about how much variety there is in jobs in government work. I always knew that public affairs wasn't what I wanted to do with the rest of my career, but it was what I had experience in, and it was kind of a foot in the door for me. So it was a great way to get experience, to learn more about federal government, and then to kind of realize that federal government might not have been for me. I work in state government now, and I really love it. So it kind of helped me realize that this isn't what I want to do with my career, and that's also a great experience. So as much as I loved the internship and I loved getting to have that experience, it made me realize that that wasn't what I wanted to do, and helped me kind of pivot in what I wanted to do with the next internship or the next job.
I think, as Maddie said, that there's a lot of value in learning what you don't like. I'm not sure that I have had that experience in my internships, but I certainly, when I went into that internship at Gettysburg, and I knew that it sort of opened a door to like the museum job world. Like I obviously knew that museums are a thing, but it didn't really click with me that like this is a job that you can have, is like go work as a collections manager or a curator. But at that point, I had thought about kind of doing like visitor services, interpretation, and then I watched my friends do the interpretation job all summer, and I was like, I don't think I'm extroverted enough to do this all day, every day. And so that kind of ruled that path out for me. But all in all, I think that my internships have definitely helped me kind of crystallize what I want to do. And particularly my library internship has helped massively in this kind of transition to grad school, and particularly that I'm here at GW and in DC and having kind of a leg up on how to navigate the library and just where all the reading rooms are. And I know some librarians and I know how their search system works. And so to be able to, leverage those skills from my own research is going to be, I think, hugely helpful. And that, I'm doing a PhD and kind of on the what is traditionally an academia track. But as anybody in academia will tell you right now, the job market for professors is not good. And so having museum skills and archival skills that I can draw on in terms of thinking about museum jobs or library jobs or archive jobs after I finish, which is, quite a few years down the road from now. But that's something that my internships have, I think I would really enjoy that. And knowing that and having some of those skills, I think will be very helpful.
Amazing, thank you. So we are getting towards the end here. Just for those that have questions in the Q&A, we're going to take a screenshot of some of those and we'll work on getting answers after the panel. But Danielle did put USA Jobs internship portal into the chat, as well as Nittany Lion Careers. There's internships posted in there, and the Federal Internship Finder in the chat. And then, of course, as our panelists mentioned, each agency may even have their own. Just go to their websites for more information as well to find those opportunities. Let me ask this: did any of your internships? Do you think that people say they're getting offered full-time jobs after their internship? Have you heard others talk about that? I know, Maddie, you said you pivoted a little bit, which is totally great. But like in the Department of State, like, does it depend on the agency, or have you seen people get full-time jobs after the internships?
I know there are definitely people who get full-time jobs afterwards. I know you said Department of State, I'll talk about a little bit about that, but I know in Congress, like a lot of people who were in the program, if they were seniors when they and they've had just finished and applied for the internship, a lot of them got a job offer the same summer. And for the Department of State, there are definitely job offers available. But I do know that there are other programs as well, like the Presidential Management Fellowship, Pathways interns that helps transitions internships into full-time positions. And so those are definitely programs that I would personally look into, but there are definitely opportunities. It is difficult, but not impossible. So if you want it, I believe in all of y'all.
Absolutely. Difficult, but not impossible. I love it. So last piece of advice, please, for our students that are here, our liberal arts students. We'll start with Maddie. If you could just give us your last piece of advice or tips on skills or whatever you think may help our students here today.
Oh, there's so much I could say, but I will reserve my advice to plug the Career Enrichment Network. They offer so many great resources that you should absolutely take advantage of. Go to all the webinars, go to their in-person things, network, meet with employers, go to things like this, you apply for enrichment funds. There's so many things that are underused by students that they either don't know about or don't take the time to look into. So absolutely, invest that time and see what your resources are. Penn State has so many resources that you probably don't even know about because there's so many of them that how could you know about all of them? So take advantage of what you have while you're at Penn State is what I'll say.
I will second that. I will also just kind of to echo, I think, some things we said earlier about just go for it. Like, don't be afraid. Don't, get psyched out by the fact that maybe you don't have like the perfect experience that they're listing. You will never know until you try. And if nothing else, it's good practice to apply. And if you get an interview, that's great because that gives you practice at interviewing with people. And so it can never hurt to apply to as many things as you can.
I will say that if you don't get an internship the first time around, that is perfectly okay. I know some people have applied 3, 7, literally 10 times. I'm not even joking, to different positions, and the 11th time they got it. And so do not worry if you don't get it the first time around. That's okay. And then also I would just say to keep an open mind. I know that's like a very cliche statement, but I do know, like, personally for me, like I said, I wanted to be at law school, and I literally got rejected from this law firm that I wanted to work at the first summer, but that led me into being able to work for Congress. And so definitely keep an open mind and apply to things that, like, you think like, oh, like I would never have interest in this. Like, you never know where life will take you. And so definitely just be open to all opportunities, and just take advantage of what is given to you now.
Awesome. Show up at events, use the resources, keep trying, right? One denial is not going to stop you. Just keep applying, keep going for it. And I cannot thank you, panelists, enough for volunteering your time this afternoon. Your stories were amazing. You're inspiring. I wish you all the best in your careers. We want you to stay close to us here in the Career Enrichment Network and also Penn State in general. Have a wonderful day, and thank you again, Julia, Mara, and Maddie, for your time.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.